Hi, we're Nia and Marianne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every Friday where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too. So if there's something that you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon. Hello, Marianne. How are you
Uh,
today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good. So what is on the agenda for today's talk?
Well, you know what? I always get excited about things, as you know, and I mean, we've talked about this before, but I've sort of found uh, an analogy that really worked for me, and I thought might be interesting for our listeners. So, we're going to talk about why you often want to change things,
Mm-hmm.
but find it so difficult. So, don't we, you and I,
Mm.
often muse about how people really do want to change and get
Mm.
healthier, because why wouldn't you? I mean, really, if
I
you
mean,
had to.
there's no bad side to being healthier, is there? There's no
So
downside.
yeah, so imagine, I was sort of imagining, um, we were all in a village hall and we were doing a thing on health, and we
Mm.
said, okay, everyone on this side of the room who wants to be healthy, and everyone who doesn't on that side. And I mean, you would expect, wouldn't you? Most people would say, "Oh golly, I'll be healthy."
Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
I would
so
or would want good health. Not I don't know whether people want to be healthy or just want good health.
okay,
That's
and
another
and
question for another day, perhaps.
and I do understand that a lot of people don't understand there's a choice, or that they don't really understand about not being healthy till they aren't, and I
Mm,
sort of get that. So
mm,
I was the same myself. I was never going to be unhealthy, so it wasn't of any interest to me
yeah,
until, I hit the barriers around midlife, like a lot of people do.
yeah,
Okay, so you and I, often I know, because once you know, it's really hard to unknow. I
yeah,
know we look around our communities and
we do.
we see lots of signs of ill health, don't we? We see them walking towards us. And I know in our minds we say, oh,
Mm,
golly, I'd really like to health coach so many people and persuade them that they can do this a whole lot better. And I know you go to the school gate every day, and that's quite interesting because I'm sure you see it too, even in the younger
I
generation.
do. I tell you what, I've always been very careful, even
Yeah,
when I wasn't a
of
health coach and
course.
when I was a pharmacist.
Yeah,
There's no unsolicited advice here because,
no,
you've got to be really careful.
yeah,
Um, but yes, it is quite tricky, especially when you do see quite unhealthy children now, with
yes,
particularly with weight and
yes,
some really big children at junior school. You're thinking, golly, um, that's quite worrying. So yes.
absolutely. And I know you do. And, we know that in data form that
Oh yeah, the data is
it's
there. It's true.
shocking. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 23% of year six children are obese. I read, I mean, take the data with a pinch of salt, but this is, and there was only 10% um, that were obese, I don't know, 10 years ago. So we're
Yeah.
talking about an increase in obesity in children. By the way, it seems to have leveled off, but that's another discussion.
Interesting.
Um,
Yeah, so
so,
those are 11-year-old children,
yeah,
obviously, in year
yeah,
6, which is, like, quite a big proportion of the first part of your life, and I think
yes,
it makes you less comfortable as a child. Then they're less likely to do activity because
yes,
I have heard, um, anecdotally, obviously, but of children being bullied about their weight as young as
yeah,
11.
yeah.
Um And really, all children that age should be sporty, should be naturally sporty because all they
Yes.
really should be doing is moving.
It's
That's their job.
literally, I mean, if we didn't send them to the classroom and you had feral children, I mean, they would be incredibly active. Isn't that the point?
Exactly. Yeah.
Naturally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So the point of this conversation is not about childhood obesity, although we could spend time talking about it, and I'd love
Mm,
to, but that's for another day. Um, it's more this ponder of mine about why. it seems there's such a disconnect. Imagine in that church hall, and we've lined them all up in
Yeah.
people who really want to embrace health,
Mm. But
and they
don't.
might start to embrace health, but they often fail. And why is that?
Yeah, and I think this is one of my
Yeah.
big things because we talk about it all the time. But why, when you know that the
Hmm.
information is there and you want it, why does it still not happen? What is the big barrier that is preventing people from actually doing something about it? And yeah, it's
Yes.
just one of those constant questions.
Exactly. We look at it and we think, they all, why do so many people need us? And they
Mm.
don't know they need us either. So I was thinking, I suppose, about the festive season, and we always think about this,
Mm.
people saying they can't
January is
make
coming.
changes because they can't make changes now, by the way,
Oh,
anytime
because it's
after
Christmas.
October, because
Mm.
because it's a festive season. So that's a write off, right? Because
Somebody
you
said to me the other day, yes, but Christmas really actually is only 2 days, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, well, we know that, but lots of people will say they can't make changes at this time of year because, there's a lot of Christmas stuff going on and festive drinks and eats and all that, and they can't do it now. So
Yeah.
guess what, happens in January, and we love it, don't
Ta-da!
we? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I think most people who work in the fitness industry
Yes.
probably make their money for the year in January.
Yes, yes, because it's Christmas for the fitness industry. I mean, basically, everybody starts to think after probably New Year's Day on about all that stuff, about changing a new year, a new sort
New
of
year,
sheet.
new me.
Yeah, new me. So we know that, and we know that local gyms are heaving in January.
Indeed.
We've probably
Fortunately, I've
talked
never
about this
been in the
before.
local gym when it's been heaving.
No, you definitely don't wanna go in January, can't get on the machines, and even if you go at 5 in the morning, by the way, there's loads of people there. So, we also know, and we've probably said this before on our podcast, that amazingly 50% of people have already stopped going to the gym in 3 weeks. I mean, it's a fantastic business plan. Anyway, um, that's not really what I'm talking about, but it sort of is.
Yeah. So we know people want to be healthy. We know they want to do something about it. And they
Yeah,
often do try. And that might be them taking out the gym membership or buying the protein
yeah,
shake or whatever it is.
yeah.
But why does it go wrong?
Okay, so this is where it gets a bit more interesting. And I read this really good analogy that explained it to me. I wanted to see what you thought in terms of illustrating to our listeners that they're not alone about wanting to make healthy habits and then really struggling to make them stick.
Yeah. And we do understand how frustrating that is because
Mm,
we see how frustrated they are with themselves. And it's frustrating from us on the other side because we're thinking, hang on a minute, don't, why? So, what is it that piqued your interest? I mean, I think you're probably talking about the conscious and the unconscious mind, aren't you? And how they sometimes have a battle against each other, which I
yeah.
have a lot of experience in personally.
Yes, and don't you always read my thoughts? So you're quite right. This is exactly where I am. But I suppose what I've found is a way to explain it that might be more interesting to listeners,
Hmm.
um, which I heard this week. So we know about the conscious mind, don't we?
Yep.
And the conscious mind is that bit of us, and unfortunately, it's only 5%. Who knew? There's
Mm.
95% that's not conscious. So this is the problem. So keep that in mind. So we're
Yep.
consciously talking to ourselves and ruminating about what we're going to do now in January and how we're going to do this new me. Now, if you see your conscious mind as your keyboard, let's talk about our brain as a computer. That's really where this analogy is.
Okay.
So we've got a computer in there, and you can imagine your brain is a computer.
Yep.
Um, and your keyboard is the conscious bit. So you're either talking to your brain or it's talking to you on that conscious bit. I mean,
Mm.
maybe you're putting something in Google Docs, and it's the information pathway into your consciousness,
Mm.
and you're talking back. So you've got people in there, you've got a person in there that's you're talking to yourself
Yeah.
and saying, God, I really must do something about this. I'm gonna make a whole lot of plans
Yeah.
because I've spent the festive season, I've eaten and drunk too much. of stuff I didn't want to, and I feel sluggish and fat. And this is a real incentive now to make changes. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
So we have this lovely festive season.
Yeah.
We enjoy our food and drink without really thinking about it because we're not focused on it. But suddenly, come January the 1st, the
Yeah.
world's lens turns in on making ourselves
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And we suddenly have that really critical narrative where we tell ourselves we're awful and we must do something about it.
Yeah.
Um, and we set up some new goals, some new targets, some new
Yeah.
habits. Often, like my marathon running, not
Yes.
quite so
Yes.
realistic.
No.
Um,
A lot of
but
that about. Yeah.
yes, and then you sort of think, that's it, I'm just going to go for it. Um, and then it
Yeah.
falls apart.
Okay, so that's our conscious. We're talking about our conscious brain. So this
Hmm.
is the keyboard side of that computer.
Yeah.
So I was going to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. By the way, it's really dark and cold at the moment, and
Yeah.
my brain, even my conscious brain, is saying, "Golly, this is terrible. Do you really want to do this? Because I want to meditate, go for a run, or go to the gym, make a healthy breakfast and lunch, and I might even want to grab a shake or a protein bar." And then what happens?
Well, it doesn't work, does it? I mean, I know that I'm never going to be able to get up at 5 a.m. and meditate. Quite frankly, that's not the life I'm gifted with at the moment.
I still have a hankering, by the way.
I know, but let's be honest, Marianne, you are out of the two of us, you are the one that's got
I'm
more
more
ability
likely
to
to
do
do
that.
it. Yeah.
And do you do it? No.
Some
So,
mornings, but it's not 5, but it feels like 5. So
yeah.
let's not go there. But yes, I get that. My lifestyle allows
Would
me.
allow that. So I think
Yeah.
as well, many people are trying to shoehorn these kind of
Yeah.
Instagrammable things into a
Yes.
life that doesn't actually match up.
There's a
Um,
very big selling book called The 5 a.m. Club, just saying.
oh, good for them.
Yeah.
My 5 a.m. club is I will be asleep for another hour. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, and you get up at 6. I mean, that's pretty good. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about.
No. So
Why does
anyway,
it fall
it
apart?
falls apart
Okay.
because we presume often that people are just setting unrealistic targets. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that's part of it, but there's
Yeah, yeah.
probably another part of it as well.
Right. So that's the cognitive part. So you started already with the cognitive part in the wrong vein. So you're
Yeah.
typing into the keyboard and it's already, you might think that you're setting yourself up to succeed. But
Mm.
what we know is that a lot of people are overstretching already on that sort of goal setting. So we know that from our own program. Okay.
Mm.
Um, but I think what's more interesting is that you don't realize you're only dealing with your conscious mind.
And there's
And
something else in the
yeah,
background making more of a
yeah, so
difference than you think. Yeah.
exactly. So you may start to argue a bit, you're not programmed to be a runner. You didn't realize that. And to make this stick, you might have to do something about the program. So, that's a great example. And you did it yourself. So there's
Mm.
nothing wrong with your physiology, and you could be a runner, that. But
Yeah.
your
Just don't
program
want to.
said, I never want to be a runner and I don't like running. And so when you try to override that program, which is your subconscious mind, and
Yeah.
this is like the hardwire of you,
Yeah.
but you didn't know you had hardwiring, and it's pretty set on those programs. And by the way, you can't speak to it. There's nobody
Yes.
there. I mean, I
Yes.
think I often speak to myself and say, I can do anything I like. But all of this conversation is in your conscious mind and not your
Mm.
subconscious mind. I mean, you can tweak, and with repetition, you can start to change those programs. But I don't think you realize that you can't talk to yourself and
Yeah,
change
you
them.
can't talk yourself out of it. You've got
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. So the program in your unconscious mind, see that as your hard drive, okay?
Mm.
And it's programmed. And unless you start to unpick the programming and reprogram it,
Mm.
these changes will only be in the cognitive bit of you. Now, some of us are pretty good at cognitive stuff,
Mm.
and we last maybe longer than some of the people who aren't. So there are people who just give up very quickly because their conscious mind says, actually, you've always failed at this. You're pretty useless at maths, aren't you? So why are you trying? We don't realize that in our program somewhere, there's some teacher who said, actually, I don't think you should think about doing further maths or even maths. and it's programmed in that I'm no good at maths. What I realize is actually it's not as simple as that. I don't want to be good at maths because I've
Mm.
got a calculator and who cares? I don't care about numbers. That's no, but there is that programming that you didn't know. Okay.
Yeah, I think when you talk about that, there are two things that strike me. Firstly,
Yep.
I can identify going
Yep.
back in my own life where I
Yep.
have hung my hat on things that people have said that have
Yes.
really affected my future. And I
Yes.
wish I'd known the impact that it would
Yep.
have had all that time
Yep.
ago. And
Yep.
secondly, that it's really, really important what you say to people.
Yes.
There is a
And
really good
particularly to your children, by
and
the way.
particularly to your children, and it's really interesting. And what you feed, the diet that you feed them on
Yeah.
in terms of words now, not actual food, but is so
Yes.
important. And
Yes.
I mean, we've talked about this before, and we will do a podcast on it one day. That one of the things that I use with my children when they say I can't do something is
Yep.
yet. You can't do it
Yes.
yet. And
Yes.
and it just fills me with so much joy when they come back and they say, "Oh,
You were
I've
right.
achieved yeah, I've
Yes.
achieved something because I hadn't been able to do it yet, but now I have." And oh, just
The
those are so
empowerment
important.
of the
Yeah.
empowerment of it.
And I don't think
And
we realize the impact of our words a lot of the
no.
time.
Oh golly,
Yeah.
my children all have to be reprogrammed. They're all adults now, but they have to be reprogrammed from a lot of things that went on in the dynamics of a family
And
without
none of them
any
with an
idea,
intention. No.
that you were fiddling with the hard wiring.
Mm.
So I think we're born with certain traits, but it's
Mm.
not as simple as that. So
No.
that baby is it's got the computer, but it hasn't got the programs.
Yeah.
So
And
the
it's all about what you
programs
put into the program.
exactly.
Mm.
So there's that. We know this because, remember that lovely Greek philosopher Aristotle said, "Give me the boy until he's 7, and I'll show you the man."
Mm.
And he's talking about that early years programming. Now, that
Mm.
doesn't define you forever, and that's the
No.
really exciting bit of this. You can tinker with your programming, but you have to know it's there. And I think many of us only ever dealt with the cognitive bit of ourselves without
Yeah.
realizing that the reason that it all came unstuck was that there was a program that was running in the background saying, actually, you're never going to do this
Yeah.
because you're not, this is not you. But actually, it can be. And I mean, in both our lives, we've proved that. And I'm
Yeah.
pleased to say I have too. So,
And I think ultimately, once you do it once, it's
yes.
about telling yourself that you have done it because then you can empower yourself to do it again. And
Yeah.
actually, so a lot of the work that you do to improve your health is actually around your mindset and the way you think about things.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
actually, doing things to improve your health, it's not complex, it's not rocket
No,
science in
it's
many
easy.
ways.
It's easy.
And you don't really always have to understand all of the physiological reasons
Yes.
why,
I know.
but your brain has to be with you. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yes, and more than just the keyboard bit of your brain, you have to look at the hardwiring. And we're all sort of technicians of our own hardwiring if we know
Mm,
how to do it. But I think for many years, I didn't really even understand that there was that hardwiring, that there
mm,
was more to me than just my cognition. I
yeah.
always thought my cognition was in charge, but it
Turns out
happens
it's not.
no.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's what I'm really excited about. Um, I think what we'll do, because this is too long now to tell you how to reprogram, because that's the next really exciting
Hmm.
bit.
Yes.
Let's leave that till next week.
Okay.
Um,
And then
and
we'll
and
in the meantime, you and I will do a crash course in computer science and tell you how to reprogram your brain next week.
yeah, and you'd probably be a lot better at it than me. But it turns out,
Well,
ah,
turns out, look at
it
that
turns out
program running there.
everybody can do it, at any
Mm.
age. And you don't have to be technically clever to do it, but you have to understand that you're dealing only with your cognitive mind a lot of the time, and it takes an awful lot more sort of work to start to change.
Mm.
the subconscious bit, and that's where the real change happens. Lots of interesting things next week. We'll talk a bit about, this is part of the placebo effect, by the way, which is
Yeah.
a strong sort of illustration of that subconscious mind. And I'm also going to tell you about when you fall in love and how that works, because that's also interesting about the cognitive bit that you show people, but you don't always show them the programming. And this is because you don't even know you've got it.
I'm
But
going to
this
talk to
is,
my husband about this tonight. I'm going to say,
yeah,
what did I
yeah,
not tell
exactly.
you?
Could you go both get your programs out and you'll see where things go wrong because you're very program triggered in various ways that you
Mm,
don't aren't even aware of yourself. Never mind, can explain it to your partner.
partner.
So
Interesting. Cool.
next week we talk, and I find this area really, really fascinating because whatever we talk about health, and that's our thing, is that understanding behavior change is so much more important
Yeah.
than even understanding the biology or the physiology or goal setting or any of these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
but really understanding
Why
how
you are the
you
way you
tick.
are and how you can change
Yes.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm,
So, to be continued.
indeed.
Talk
All
next
right.
week.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye for now.